I now give the floor to His Excellency, the Honourable Ralph Gonsalves, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I align myself fully and enthusiastically with the statement made yesterday morning by the Honourable Prime Minister of Belize on behalf of the Caribbean community CARICOM. The presence at this conference of the Prime Ministers of Belize, Barbados, Grenada, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, along with the Deputy Prime Minister of Jamaica, the Finance Minister of Guyana, and the other high-ranking ministers of our region, indicates the importance with which the Caribbean views the global economic crisis and this summit. Recent years have seen the small, open, and vulnerable economies of the Caribbean being globalized out of agricultural exports, particularly bananas. Global warming and sea level rise threaten us with being climatized out of our similar reliance on tourism. And we are now being stigmatized out of our attempts to diversify through financial services. Today, the uninvited tides of an insidious international malaise have washed our shores, gathering force into a veritable tsunami of economic and financial distress. Mr. President, contrary to the official title of this conference, we view our global family as ensnared in more than a mere financial and economic crisis. Rather, it is profoundly a crisis of capitalist globalization, of international capitalism in crisis. Although there has been regulatory failure of the banks, insurance companies, and other financial institutions, all this is reflective of the triumph of a neoliberal ideology which sought to roll back any interventionist role of the democratic state. The organs of the state, so the neoliberal thesis went, were to be minimalist. The international capitalist system, driven by the market, was best left to be self-regulatory according to the neoliberal ideologues. Well, the chickens have come home to roost as the poor and the working people suffer consequentially. The worst crisis in international capitalism since 1929 to 1931 has come upon us. Caribbean countries, including St. Vincent and the Grenadines, suffer from the socio-economic fallout. We are casualties, nay victims, from this external crisis, not of our making. The real current and future impacts on national development are numerous. Poverty and unemployment are rising worldwide, straining already fragile social safety nets. Foreign direct investment is scarcer, and they're coming much smaller. Commodity price volatility and contractions in world trade strain fragile budgets. Official development assistance is receding, and our regional aspirations for timely achievement of the Millennium Development Goals seem increasingly remote. This crisis has therefore laid bare a mode of production, consumption, and distribution that is unsustainable and unethical. The limited and unimaginative corrective measures suggested by some states and institutions are similarly bereft of logic and value. Why should we be forced by circumstances beyond our control to borrow from those whose bad advice and reckless regulatory neglect precipitated this crisis? Why are we once again paying for the mistakes of others? The IMF and World Bank may view many of our developing friends in the periphery of globalization as being heavily indebted. But the debt of responsibility in this crisis lies in unregulated financial centers of the developed world, in the arrogant ignorance of those who consider it their right to prescribe and proscribe our policy space, and in the unfounded ideological sanctimony of those who hold us to a higher standard than they hold themselves. Indeed, it is the rich nations that are heavily indebted. They are indebted to the poor peoples of the world based on a history of broken promises, failed advice, neglect, fiscal hypocrisy, ideological bankruptcy, and welfare colonialism. Today, they must begin the process of rectifying this massive global debt, from each according to its abilities and to each according to its needs. Mr. President, we speak not to point the finger of blame, but to point the path to collective recovery from this global depression. The noble and pragmatic people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines are less enamored with esoteric ideological problems than their practical solutions. These solutions necessarily include a quest for economic and political space, which is critical to develop our economies and improve our people's living standards. In this quest for enhanced space, the role of the state is vital. The democratic state has been a force for good in our Caribbean region, and it cannot retreat, especially in the current circumstances. But the state must exhibit a more profound and effective democratic governance. Secondly, our solutions must be lodged within a regional and appropriate internationalist context. Thirdly, a comprehensive framework has to be elaborated and implemented to build a modern, competitive, many-sided, post-colonial economy, which is at once local, national, regional, and global. Fourthly, a necessary and desirable socio-cultural rubric must be unfurled in practice to ennoble further our Caribbean civilization and an authentic historical reclamation. And fifthly, the entire project must be people-centered in life, production, and rewards. We have also sought to strengthen the bonds of regional solidarity and international cooperation in the face of a hostile or indifferent developed world. St. Vincent and the Grenadines has forged deeper links with the Caribbean and Latin American brothers and sisters through PetroCaribe, the Bolivarian Alternative for the Americas, ALBA, the Caribbean Single Market and Economy of CARICOM, the Economic Union with the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, and a proposed economic union with Trinidad and Tobago. We have forged additional beneficial links beyond but not separate from our traditional friends and allies with the Republic of Turkey,